Today we have two good resurrection stories, kind of foreshadowing for Easter. We'll hear one passage from the book of Ezekiel, and then the story in the Gospel of John that I'll be focusing on will be Jesus' raising of Lazarus from the dead. So that will be, those will be our two stories that we'll be looking at today. Well, how is your relationship with death? I realize that might be a question that sounds too personal or too sensitive, or maybe not usually one you think of or want to think of before 10:30 in the morning, but here we are. And depending on how you look at it, Christians have this strange, even morbid relationship, perhaps, with death. Consider bone chapels. Throughout Europe, there are these chapels, ossuaries they're called, constructed and decorated with bones. A lot of them are centuries old. These are places where monks and nuns, the faithful, had cared for the remains of their dead and acknowledged that the dead can provide some kind of message, some kind of gift for the living, even in their death. And these chapels are constructed, and it's not so much that death is celebrated in them, but death is recognized as this fate that we all share, that awaits us all someday. A lot of them even will have some message either made in bones or in writing that says something like, "We bones that lie here await yours," or "What you are now, we used to be. What we are, you will be." Some kind of very plain reminder. And it's not really to frighten people, but it's more to adorn, to kind of you could see the detail, this very carefully constructed patterns that are made, that are laid out with these bones. I imagine that being quite strange to be there. Already it's kind of like, see you getting a little wiggly, right, in your seats. This is quite striking for, I think, our culture. Because here we're reminded that for centuries, people of faith have faced the harsh reality of life. And in that, sought maybe this kind of strange comfort, right? To be in a place like this where you're surrounded by the remnants of the ones who've gone before. In our culture, we're so used to hiding death. Right? It's something so unsettling, so disturbing that we like to keep at a distance. I can't imagine any chapels like these being constructed in our society, in our culture. And I confess that I have a pretty mercurial relationship with death, maybe more mercurial than I would like. You would think that, I recognize it's something that awaits us all. It's a fate that awaits us all. I've definitely been around my share of the dead just in my ministry, but I find that I still have echoes of that Dylan Thomas poem in my ears. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of light. And I've recognized that after spending time with someone who is near death or who has died, I've noticed that I have this pattern. I have an urge to go for a workout or go for a run, to do something where I experience life more fully, right? All that it's here. And I think I do it as a protest against death. And in our scriptures today, both of them, we encounter death more like a passage. First, it's this kind of temporal reality that is waiting to be transformed. And we first saw that transformation in Ezekiel, right? That message where the prophet is overlooking this valley of dry bones and hears this message, right, from God. You shall know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from the graves, my people. Quite a a vivid scene that Tom read for us earlier. And then, of course, the story of Lazarus, right? Again, we get a sense that death is this passage, just this temporary thing where Jesus is told about Lazarus and says, our friend has fallen asleep, but I'm going to awaken him. So you get the sense that death is more like sleep. And for a long time, that's how theologians have looked at death and resurrection as kind of this period of sleep before we're awakened by God. And there's some surprising decisions that we see Jesus has today. First is that he would go to Judea because he's faced some pushback there. It's his disciples remind him, hey, they just tried to stone you there. You're saying you want to go back? That's the first surprise, that he would want to go right into that dangerous situation again. But then there's also the surprise that he heard his friend Lazarus was sick, is dying, and he decides to wait, right? 2 days after hearing that the one he loved was ill. And both of these kind of support the main idea of this story, that Jesus' love somehow overcomes the power of death. They don't know that right away, that is what's going to happen, of course. And how he overcomes it, how he overcomes that death, isn't just a magic trick or sleight of hand, but what we see in Jesus is that he's willing to go right through death, right through that pain of human experience. And twice, we heard Lazarus' sisters say the same thing. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Mary and Martha both say this to him on separate occasions. And of course, it's this desire or this expression that comes from their grief, right? If you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. And I can't help but wonder if that's related to the God, if only you would, situations that we construct. God, if only I had another chance. If only I had a bit more money or a bit more time. If only life were fair. If only we caught it sooner. Right? We would create a pretty nice world with all our if onlys. It's worth examining if in those with onlys we seek to be connected to God, or if it's just who we think God should be or what we think God should be doing. No doubt Mary and Martha both had high expectations for Jesus. It's doubtful he ever said to them, hey, I can stop death. I could prevent death, right? You just let me know when it's coming and I'll step in. It's likely that they just knew that he was this amazing, mysterious figure who could do something for them more than what life was giving them. And resurrection, for Martha, sounds distant, right? Jesus says that it will happen. She says, yeah, I know it's going to happen on the last day. But Jesus says, no, it's here now. I am the resurrection and the life. And he says, those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And that will live sounds like it's going to be future, right? Like it's, yeah, we get that. We get that will happen at some future time. But Jesus' actions, what he's about to do, reveals that for those who believe in him, there's some kind of life now that he's ready to give. Kind of like with the man who was born blind. Kind of like with the woman who was at the well when he's talking about living water, right? There's some gift, something now that he is offering for those who are willing to see it, for those who are willing to accept it. And I've wondered what keeps us from participating in resurrection life now. I admit that I don't always think of the life that we have as part of a future resurrection that we're living into, but it is. And I think some of the things that keep us from participating in that, from accepting that, is that we are constantly reminded of our mortality. powers of death surround us and they feel so potent. Anytime we hear of new wars or of death, anytime we face changing health situations, we're reminded of death, right? It has a very strong hold on our lives, on our hope even. Sometimes it feels like if hope isn't sucked out of our sails, then it's just slowly eroding from us, as so much seems to not change at all. What then is resurrection? Well, another mistake that I think is sometimes that or another thing that prevents us from accepting this resurrection life now, is that we mistake that resurrection life for just life as it is, more regular life. As if we can be content with just living an unexamined, easygoing life. And I think it's worth thinking about how strange this resurrection life is. Even though Jesus is certain of what he's going to do, he knows his delay, right? He knows what he's going to do for Lazarus. Even when he's at the tomb, what happens? Jesus weeps, right? He knew what would happen to Lazarus when he's told that Lazarus is ill. And he says this illness does not lead to death, but it did. But it also didn't, right? That's strange. He knew that he was about to give Lazarus back to the world of the living, back to his loving sisters. And yet, Jesus was still deeply moved, deeply troubled, the scripture says. So we see Jesus showing us that resurrection life is Jesus entering human pain. The theologian Herman Ritterboss has a good way of kind of looking at this. He says, Jesus does not come to redeem the world from imaginary grief, or to make grief over death imaginary. Instead, Jesus takes the time to grieve. And Jesus shows us that God is willing to suffer. Now, when face to face with death, Jesus does weep, he does grieve, but then his words, take away the stone, right? I imagine that being the least expected thing that he could say at that time. Which raises a couple questions that I want to kind of leave you with today. Does what Jesus says sound strange to us? And if Jesus doesn't sound strange, then are we sure we're living the resurrection life? Communion is strange, isn't it? Every Sunday we come here and we remember this meal of death, right? And yet, for us, it is a reminder of the life that we continue to have, the life Jesus continues to give us. Telling that story of body broken and blood shed, only because of the resurrection is that story of his death life-giving. Now, we may still find little comfort in death or in pain. And that's human. But when we're willing to face it, even there, we find that Jesus has life still to give. Amen.